Alright, guys. We're going to do Fairy Tale chapter
422.
422. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
It was Oreochin's fin. I don't know how to fucking pronounce it.
Yeah.
It's not important. What's important is what happened in the chapter.
Yeah.
And it's another intriguing chapter, very to say the least. I mean, we got to see some, finally start to see some, see what, how Lucy progressed and how Natsu progressed, and some and some other surprises.
Yeah, I mean, Blue Note coming back. That was kind of out of left field.
That was no, that is you couldn't get more out of left field,
Yeah.
and it actually be worthwhile too, mind you that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure people they could if he wanted to, he could find a way to go even further out left field, but it won't make any sense.
hmm
But it might not make sense. Blue Note is good because it'll allow us to see how far Natsu has come.
Yeah.
But let's start from the beginning, where we have Wendy and Shelia, just fly over the horde of beasts and, arrive to try and take out the summoner.
hmm
And then we switch over to Lucy and the rest and Lamia Scale, who are defending the city from the monsters. And we hallelujah, hallelujah. There was a collective sigh of relief and praising the heavens to whatever belief you believe in. Like, Lucy didn't waste her year.
Nope.
She didn't waste her year. She now knows how can infuse herself with the celestial spirit magic of the spirits, so she can use their powers to fight on her own.
Which is great.
And oddly enough, apparently similarly to that of Urza, she gets an outfit change
hmm
with it, as well as their symbol on her, shoulder area,
Right.
which is interesting. But it still doesn't know. So that basically explains what happened in the Taurus arc with Aquarius.
hmm
But then this also still doesn't answer the question I still want to know. Does she have to have the key to summon the power, or or is Aquarius' power infused with her and is something that she could summon at will?
I think it's
Who knows?
probably the former at this
What,
point.
that she needs the key?
Yeah. Just because of the way this worked, I think they set that up that she doesn't need Aquarius's power right away, at least.
Of course, we also don't know. Like I said, we know eventually she's Aquarius's keys, because they obviously, as we know, for it to be found out, like, we know Aquarius's key is going to be brought back at some point.
hmm
The question is when and how.
Yeah.
I remember what was it? I mean, most people probably and at this point the most likely answer is it's probably going to show up towards the end of the series,
Yeah.
like maybe even as something she does as part of the wrap up for the series. But I mean, I would hope that she would get it sooner, because you know especially since this arc is getting longer and longer by the chapter.
Mm.
And this is just recruiting Wendy.
Yeah.
Imagine, and Charlotte, what the hell's, what else we're gonna need?
Right.
But then you have friggin' everyone jaw dropped at Natsu just running through the crowd of monsters like they're nothing, just beating the crap out of them.
hmm
Now, despite the fact that Lucy now has the ability to fight with using the abilities of her celestial spirits, they still have to do the comedic Lucy kick.
Yep.
But instead, it's the Lucy Regulus kick.
Yep.
So I guess because it's a little more of a light-hearted fight, I guess they decided to let it slot. They slipped it in there because they're like, we want to showcase how she's grown as a fighter, as a wizard, but at the same time, it's not really necessary for her to be super serious. So we'll just make it a more comedic move.
Well, that's her signature move.
Lucy kick.
With the echoes in the background.
Yeah, I know. Which is definitely going to be interesting to see how the other the Regulus is obvious. It's pretty obvious how the Regulus powers are going to help her, but the question is how is she going to utilize the other Celestial Spirit's powers?
Maybe she'll get like super strength with Taurus.
Taurus?
Yeah.
Maybe, but there's other questions like, for instance, in this chapter, she summoned Leo, then infused herself with the power. Does she have to do that every time? Or can she okay, I summoned Leo, but then I'm going to infuse myself with Taurus's power?
Not sure.
Well, it's only the first time we've seen her use it, so...
Yeah.
But it just brings peace to mind that we know she has gotten stronger. And most likely, because she was able to do it in the Taurus arc, she can probably also summon 3 spirits at once.
Yeah.
Probably with ease.
Mm-hmm.
Because she was able to do it
in
the Taurus arc. Now, this chapter did many things. One of them was shit, and I mean shit hard on Happy. You just couldn't shit on Happy any harder. Really? Not only can he not have a human transformation, but now Carla has learned magic to fight with while in her human form. So now she's just not a means of transportation. She's a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And all Happy can do is have his little gag with the fish.
Yeah, well, Happy was never serious in the first place, so...
Yeah, but it's now it's unfair. It would be unfair if Happy doesn't get a human form that can fight.
He's already got the durability of God knows what, surviving a nuke or whatever, that nuke in the Tartarus arc.
Yeah, but you have to also remember that he is Natsu's partner, and Natsu is, by the end of the series, is going to be the most powerful wizard on the planet.
Yeah.
And you cannot be, yes, he might have, Happy might have some good durability, and, he might have improved his stamina so he can fly longer, but really, you need to have some offensive capabilities to help Natsu out. Because, he's going to need help. He's not going to be, it's just, it's necessary. They wouldn't give, because Panther Lily always had that, bulky, somewhat humanoid form, and was able to fight. And we thought that, that was Panther Lily's thing, but now Carla can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously in a different manner, but can still fight, turn human. She has a humanoid form, and can fight now. So it's okay, now it's not just a Panther Lily thing. It's, the fairy tale, Exceeds are being showcased as, being on a whole new level above the other Exceeds in the series.
Right.
Which isn't too hard when you're considering your competition being the Sting and Rogues Exceeds, which are so horrible I can't even remember their names because they're that unimportant.
Lecter and Frosh.
And the Ichia clone.
Oh God.
Who's even more useless than the other two.
God. Of all the people, they had to make a clone of him. For God's sakes.
They had to because, of the whole Daedalus arc, but the fact that they made his clone be an Exceed, and then for that Exceed to encounter the real Ichia, and and which is interesting because I think just recently they English dubbed got up to episode 175 in the English dub, so you actually got to hear their little thing in the double battle where you have them talking back and forth to one another before the cat just gets one shotted.
Uh-huh.
It's just like, and you now, if you remember correctly, the guy who voices Ichiya and thus the Edalus cat clone, excuse me, is the same guy who did the opening narration for the Toriko anime.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the guy they did for the English saying this world, So just imagine that guy's voice talking to himself about parfum and men.
Oh man. Or should I say, oh man?
I know, it's hilarious. But so it's definitely, but in terms of this chapter, it's definitely shows us that Happy needs it. Like, yes, he needs it, and it's not gonna, change the fact that he's a comic relief character.
Right.
I mean, we thought we had enough in all the random Fairy Tail members. We thought we had enough comic relief, combined with all the comic relief we get from the various quirks of the Fairy Tail members. No, they had to have Happy as well. I mean, not as we've seen Natsu improve leaps and bounds, but he still hasn't really changed that much in terms of personality. He still has his quirks. So it's not like Happy, being able to get a humanoid form, and being able to fight will make him any less of a comedic relief character.
I don't think I would be able to take it seriously just because of how Happy is.
Well, yeah, obviously Happy would probably have some goofy ass, looking humanoid form, and his magic probably wouldn't be that. He'd have some. He wouldn't be fighting the super strong guys, but he'd still, he'd be fighting fodder guys, but it still would be, with probably some like weird jokish type magic. But the fact is he still needs to be able to fight. But on another note, with the humanoid forms, he did it already. Friggin' Hiro Mashima and that cover page with friggin' Carla in her human form. Like, really? Her human form hasn't even been around for that long, and you're already trying to get us to have boners for her? Like, really? like, Jesus, like, what the hell did this guy go through in his life that caused this to happen?
He just wants to draw fan service all day, I'm sure.
And, like, literally, did he seriously only give Carla a humanoid form so he could appeal to his friggin' a certain demographic?
Possibly.
But anyway, then we get to that whole thing with Blue Note, and Blue Note just, takes everyone out with the gravity, and no one can do jack shit about it. But Natsu just comes in, picks up Shelly, and is like, why are you guys all on the ground? Like, doesn't even notice what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that in and of itself shows how much Natsu's grown in strength.
Oh, yeah.
To the point where he's unaffected. Now, the biggest thing is that everyone talks about is that how Blue Note is, was on par with, Gildart's 8 years ago, sorry. But you gotta remember one important fact, and they're like, oh, well, so then that'll allow us to see how strong he is in comparison to a guy who was as strong as Gildart's was 8 years ago, but he's probably also gotten a little stronger since it's been 8 years. And then you gotta remember one important fact. One seriously important fact. There was no fight between Gildarts and Blue Note. They had a little standoff of power. Then you had that whole thing with all of the Fairy Tail members losing their magic. Then the magic came back, and Gildarts one-shotted Blue Note.
I know, right?
So Blue Note couldn't even touch, in a real match, couldn't even touch Gildarts 8 years ago.
And Gildarts didn't even go all out.
Didn't even need to go out against Blue Note 8 years ago. So even though Blue Note's gotten stronger in 8 years, Natsu, now this isn't going to be a one-shot deal, but it's, Natsu shouldn't have trouble with him.
Yeah, until Blue Note starts tripping and destroying villages.
I thought that was Gildarts.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Until he starts tripping and destroying villages, he's not nearly on par with freaking Gildarts.
Oh, well, sure, he probably does. I mean, I guess he can't. I mean, his gravity could destroy, but it's Gildarts. You cannot, no one. There have been many, many badass characters throughout all of anime history, and there have also been a lot of badass anime characters who have clumsy quirks about them. But not a single one of them has a quirk such as empty-headedness and clumsiness that causes destruction of buildings and towns like it's nothing. Like friggin', you have to rebuild his home. The Magnolia had to rebuild itself, so that way when Gildarts came to town, they had to make it so that way there's only one path to get there.
Yep.
So he wouldn't get lost and then end up just busting through buildings to get to the guild hall. And he friggin' trips and falls on the ground. Boom, there goes the whole town. No. You got Zoro from One Piece who's super badass, but has shit, has the worst direction in all, probably the worst directions in all of anime history. Yes. Well, second most. Or at least from one of all of the animes I've seen, he is only the second worst. But the fact is that you just can't redo, you just can't reproduce Gildarts, even though, Shanks. That's, which, it's something we could probably spend an entire video talking about, but
yeah,
let's not get into that right now. Mm-hmm. Point is that Natsu, hopefully, next chapter is a full-length fight between Blue Note and Natsu wins by the end.
Right.
Because I don't want it to be a quick one-shot, even though I don't want there to be too many. Even though I wanted, before I read this week's chapter, I wanted it to be the second, this chapter and then the next chapter be recruiting Wendy. No. At this point, I'd be like, okay. I'd be satisfied if we, had the full fight next week and then at the end of the chapter, just the fight's over, and then the following week's chapter, we finally get Wendy.
Right.
I'd be happy with that. I don't want it to be so short that, you have within, 2 pages, Blue Note's out on the floor.
Yeah, that would be horrible.
In more than ways than one, because, you can't just have Blue Note be taken out that easily, because he's been hyped up to be on Gildarts' level.
Right.
So, at best, even if he isn't actually all the way there, he should at least put up a good fight.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Natsu should have grown to the point where he should be close to, if not at Gildarts' level. Or at least Gildarts' level from a year ago. Or 8 years ago. Or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, no. They're pretty much the same, because Gildarts was a part of the whole Tenra Island. So, yeah, a year ago. Whatever he was a year ago.
Right.
So, now, like I said, I hope and pray that we don't get too many more of these, because what is this, the 4th chapter or the 5th chapter in the Wendy recruit part of the... I'm trying to remember.
I think it's only the 3rd or 4th. Let me see.
No, hold on. The Thanksgiving episode.
Wendy and Shelly, and then Orochi's fin. So, yeah, this is only the 3rd.
The 3rd. So, at best, 5 chapters.
Yeah.
Because the next chapter is not... They're not going to take out Blue Note that quickly. So, next chapter before, and then the chapter after that is when Wendy decides to go along. Unless, they... all but one of the pages of the next chapter is dedicated to the fight, and then on the last page, they quickly wrap everything up, and Wendy leaves with them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could also be a possibility, but, you know, I don't want any time taken away from the Blue Knight Natsu fight, because they need all, you know, 17 or 18 pages, or however many he decides to put in for that chapter that week.
Right.
And then, but overall, I really enjoyed this chapter. It showcased a lot how much the characters have progressed in terms of fighting abilities.
Yeah, I like this chapter for many reasons. The main reason, in my
Blue
opinion,
Note.
was Lucy.
Lucy, yes, Lucy. She is on point,
Yes.
and is finally you can say she's strong enough to truly be able to stand side by side with the other members of the quote unquote fairy tale strongest team,
Mm-hmm.
which over the years has expanded and expanded and expanded and expanded to include like half the guild.
Yeah.
Like, first it started out as Lucy. For some reason, Lucy just with like when you had the whole first arc, you had like Lucy, Gray, Natsu, and Urza, and they were like, "Oh, the strongest team." Well, it's like, don't you mean the strongest team plus Lucy? No, the strongest team. Because, you know, apparently Natsu made a joke saying that she's like super freakishly, monstrously strong. And then it like grew, like then you had friggin' the addition of Gajil and Wendy, then friggin', you know, by default, friggin' Juvia because she's always with Gray.
Panther Lily because of
Panther,
Gajil.
he's with Gajil. Now Carla's technically even more useful now.
Mm-hmm.
And you friggin' then you had friggin' Locks, like, the Locks, like, somehow, like, during the Grand Magic Games plot, after, like, the Tenor Island stuff, like, you had the friggin' addition of, like, Elfman and friggin', like, literally, like, if you took, like, the majority of Tenor Island, like, somehow fused together to become one giant, like, strongest fairy tale team, like...
By default.
By default, because they're all, like, they always seem to end up together.
That's what it should be called now. Fairy Tail Strongest Team by default.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point behind the whole the Tenor Island time skip was that, you know, literally all of their strongest members were all were like frozen in time for 7 years. So it's like, well, when all your strongest members are gone for 7 years, you know, so. Like, the only person who hasn't been with the strongest is Gildarts.
Yeah.
And he'll show up at the last minute when Natsu's freaking, like, you know, like, having his whole identity crisis when he finds out he's End, and he's freaking going berserk, hurting friend and foe alike, and he's just gonna come in and flick him in the head, and Natsu's gonna go flying, like, 1,000 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Or he's going to give him some, like, speech about, you know, being who you are and remembering who you are. And then he's like, all right. And then he remembers, oh, I want to kick Gildarts' ass. I'm Natsu Dragneel.
Right.
Which is going to be interesting because even though there was kind of, you know, Natsu jokes about how he always wants to beat Urza and he always wants to beat Gildarts, but he never can. That's actually something they're probably going to do before the end of the series, though, is have a serious match between... Oh my god. Is it actually going to be possible that in the theorized final arc where we're going to be facing off against Acnologia, Zeref, and End, that in the process, maybe the almighty Urza might actually lose a fight?
Nah.
Because when you think about it, you know, obviously... It's going to come down to, you know, before Acnologia and Zeref get defeated, Natsu's going to have his whole identity crisis, you know, between his End side and his fairy tale side. You know, his good and evil halves, and, you know, he's going to, you know, for a while be evil, and then, you know, Urza's going to try and take him down, but she's going to get her ass beat. And just the thought of that possibility of her actually losing a fight, that there's even a possibility. Because even if it isn't there, like a friendly, like all-out match between the two at the end of the series, just the fact that Natsu's probably gonna beat her and she might lose a fight just actually makes me very happy.
You know who's gonna stop him, right?
Guild Arts?
Nope.
Gray?
The one who is given the magic to stop End.
Lucy! And her magic boobs.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Oh yeah, the one who's going to be able to go. That's why I think. I think Urza's going to, being one of the more powerful ones, is going to try and take down Natsu, and he's going to beat her ass. Gray is going to be the only one who's going to be able to be on par because of the fact that he's a Devil Slayer now, which, if any of you guys know, is actually pays homage to his original idea of Gray's character, which was to be a Ice Dragon Slayer. But Gray was too cool to be to be a conformist, to be a Dragon Slayer.
Right.
But anyway, then you have the whole thing, and then if that's the case, they're going to fight it out. They're probably going to be pretty even, but but the obvious thing's going to happen where fire is going to be better than ice. So even though it's going to be close, Natsu's probably going to beat out Gray, and then you're going to have that emotional speech with, maybe Guild Arts will show up, try to face him in a fight, and, knock some sense into him. Happy's going to try and knock some sense into him. Nope, not going to work. But Lucy's going to show up and, give some emotional speech and finally admit that she loves him and, he's going to return himself to normal.
That'll be
I'm calling it. Yes, but I'm calling it now.
Oh boy.
And how scary accurate we've become recently.
This podcast has been like a crystal ball at times.
Oh yeah, I got something to tell you later on in the other media that might freak you out even more. Not more.
Okay.
But overall, yeah, we've dragged this on long enough. This was a good chapter.
Yeah.
Can't wait for next week.